Hey TD Superheroes, I'm Alejandro Perez, your sidekick, and in this video I want to take a look at using ChatGPT to be able to debug some code and make some changes to the code that I am working with. So if I go back to Maya... Okay, so I have my face rig script, and there's been a couple of people that want to make it work in older versions of Maya which run Python 2.7, and in more recent versions of Maya we're using version 3 of Python. I'm not 100% sure, I think it's like 3.9 that we're using, but there are changes in some of the code. In this script, the error line that I know for sure that is getting the code as an issue are the F strings. So we need to restructure these. So this is the first one in my script. And if I copy this and go back to my ChatGPT, I can say, how do I make this code compatible with Python 2.7, and then I can go in and add that line, and they'll go through and start looking at the code. So it tells us that we need to use the format because fstring doesn't exist in this form. It is a faster version inside of the Python 3, but I can copy this code now and just copy the code, and it gives us an explanation. So this would be the way we want to update the formatting to be able to work with Python 2.7. So if I go back to my code, I just basically can paste that in. But then I would have two different versions of the code. So I want to make one version that actually goes through and does both, and if it gets an error, it catches it and it tries the next version. So let's go back to here. I want to use either this and then or this. Oops, I entered it. Let me just start a new thread. Let me copy this. Actually, let's see if it figures it out. See, it's explaining it. It works in 3.6, and the first one will work in 2.7. So it's going through and explaining what the changes are and what you would do. Let's see if it actually gives us a example. Here we go. I thought it was going to give us the code there. It's giving us a lot of information. It's actually kind of good. It's explaining why it works. Okay. So it's explaining why each one works. So I want to use a try except for the following 2 lines of Python code. So hopefully it will write it out this time, but basically I want to try the first version, and then if it doesn't work, switch it over to the second version. So that way the code, I can have one code out, but it will be compatible both with the 2.7 version and the 3.6 version of Python. So note the try expect only handles the case where the error runs into a version of Python that does not support f strings. If there is an error with the f string itself, or the character name variable is not defined, try except block will not work. So let's copy this, and then we can go into Maya, and then I'm gonna put it on the next version, and instead of results, because I know that I need controls, CTRLS, I'm going to replace CTRLS here and CTRLS here. I need to make sure the indentation is all correct, and then we have reset controls. There we go. So Now I can go through and I can basically remove this line, and I can search the code. There we can see we have that, and we can go in and find wherever the next F string would be. And here you can see I'm immediately getting into another line where I have an F string. So I used F strings quite a bit here inside of the code, but basically at this point I can go through, check for all the F strings and find the code. So I would use the same try except and then format it in this way. I could keep on going back to the code editor over at, well, not code editor, but the ChatGPT, and try to make changes and update the code here, or I can make the code changes now that I know kind of the structure that I would want to use to fix that. And then we can go back to Maya and then update it here. You could go in and, like, let's say, copy all of this. And so it does have a limit on the amount of code that you can input, but you can copy a block of code. Actually, let me see if I can find a shorter one. Okay, this function over here. Okay, so I'll copy this one and then go to the ChatGPT and says, I would like to use try except blocks to use both F strings and format functions. And then I can copy all of that down, and then let's see if it updates it here. So here we can see that it just has those strings. The F blocks are going to be towards the bottom. So we can see if it updates it. Yep. So you can do blocks of code that way, so you can get multiple of them where it does it for you automatically. There we go. So I'll just copy this code, and it looks like everything is correct. I'll definitely have to kind of test everything, but I can go through and paste that back in and run it. It runs. It doesn't have any syntax errors. I do have to go through and test all the code. So you can do it line by line like we did up here, or you can go through and get a block of code. Like I said, be careful, because if you take the whole code and put it inside of the ChatGPT and try to update it. So I'm going to go over here, and then I can copy this and set it up here. Okay, so I'm telling it to do the exact same thing, but I put my whole code in here. There is a limit on the number of lines that the ChatGPT will actually output. So here's my whole code, and then, okay, so it's just trying to do it in the section. So I have it in the bonus tools there. Let's see if it just strips out different sections. That would be cool. I tried it once before and it tried to rewrite the whole code. And then, okay, so it did one block there. Let's see if it does another one. But once it gets to a certain point, it's just going to stop. So it's explaining exactly what it's doing in each one of these. And then there, you can see I got the network error. I lost all the work that I did because I tried to get the ChatGPT to do too much for me. So that is one issue you have to kind of watch out for. It was giving me good information. You don't want to lose it if you are doing a lot. So I did kind of use ChatGPT to try to create code for me in the previous video, and it kind of gave me really mixed results, leaning towards the bad. But in this case, where I already have the code written and I just want to kind of make changes to the code, and I know what changes I want to make, or I want to figure out something like right at the beginning where I was figuring out, okay, how do I make an F string compatible with 2.7? And it gives us the format to double check. So anything that ChatGPT does give you for code, make sure that you double check that the code is correct, because you don't want to like lose a lot of the work you've already done and replace it with something that doesn't work and then spend a lot more time debugging it. So I think this would be kind of a more actual like useful type of thing, rather than trying to create a whole code or a whole script. Look at little snippets of code that you've already created to debug or to find a solution for, and then implement that yourself in a larger script that you're working on. That seems to work really well, and you can kind of build it up from that point. So I do feel like right now ChatGPT, with the ability to debug code, is pretty good. Just kind of make sure that you are testing as you go along, because there can definitely be errors while you're working on it, but it can shortcut your time to figure out how to fix something. Or if you need something that is just repetitive and you're doing it a lot, you can take a block that has a lot of those things that are happening all at once and just do it through ChatGPT. I hope you guys found this useful. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.